This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. Hey team, how are we doing? Welcome to the Crypto Conversation. I know in my audience I've got a lot of different types of people. We've got executives, business owners, crypto traders, tech entrepreneurs, and if that is you, then no doubt you are juggling competing priorities all day, every day. Ever feel like your brain is being pulled in a million different directions? Yeah, I know how you feel. Some days you just feel totally frustrated because it feels like you're stuck in first gear. What can you do to break free and accelerate to the next level? Well, Elon Musk's Neuralink, that's on the way, but probably a long way off. Luckily, folks, there is a safe and effective solution that is available right now, and they are a new sponsor here at the Crypto Conversation. I'm talking about Newtopia. Newtopia was created to help high achievers like you break through barriers and achieve more faster than you ever thought possible. Newtopia offers a variety of nootropic stacks designed to boost memory, cognitive function, and energy levels. Taking the right formulas at the right times can help you focus, block out distractions, reduce stress and anxiety, and enhance your creativity. And you'll be amazed by how quickly they work. You can feel the mental effects within just 15 to 30 minutes. Plus, what's really cool about Newtopia is every stack was formulated by a man who is described as the most advanced brain chemist and nootropics formulator alive today. Secondly, every formula is customized for you based on your strengths, weaknesses, and goals, so you get exactly what you need. How much is 1 hour of your time worth? What if you could reclaim 5 hours of productive time every week? Would that have an impact on your bottom line? Well, Newtopia's formulas are a total game changer, and they also come with a full 1-year guarantee, so there's zero risk for you if you want to try them out. So, ready to upgrade your brain? Simply go to newtopia.com/crypto and use the code crypto10, that's crypto10, to receive 10% off any order. And again, the website is Newtopia, that's NOOTOPIA.com/crypto, and the code crypto10 or crypto10. All right, let's get on with the show. My guest today is Arie Redbord. Arie is the head of legal and government affairs at TRM Labs, the blockchain intelligence company, and prior to joining TRM, Arie was the senior advisor to the Deputy Secretary and the Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence at the United States Treasury. Welcome to the show, Arie.
Andy, excited to join you today. Thanks so much for having me.
It is a pleasure. So, at the beginning of the show, Arie, we usually get the guest to introduce themselves and just give a quick snapshot of, I suppose, their personal story leading up to, well, in your case, what you've been doing at TRM. So I've kind of hinted at it just in the intro there. But please, in your own words, please do introduce yourself.
Terrific. Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. So as you mentioned, I'm head of legal and government affairs at TRM Labs. We are a blockchain intelligence company, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Prior to joining TRM, I was a federal prosecutor at the U.S. Department of Justice for about 11 years. I focused much of that time on threat finance, so the intersection of money laundering and national security, terrorist financing, export control, sanctions, criminal prosecutions. I then, as you mentioned, spent about 2 years at the U.S. Treasury Department as the senior advisor to the Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, then eventually the Deputy Secretary. It's all a mouthful, only in government type titles, but really at the end of the day, it's the role that sort of oversees the national security apparatus within the U.S. Treasury Department. So OFAC, which is the sanctions regulator, FinCEN, which is the financial intelligence unit of the United States, the anti-money laundering regulator, and then a number of other components. So really always in that sort of illicit finance space. And at TRM, it's very much sort of continuing that same mission. It's working with law enforcement and regulators and financial institutions and crypto businesses as really an anti-money laundering tool to stop bad actors from taking advantage of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, got it. So the website TRM Labs, I guess the byline, if you like, it says something like TRM Labs is a digital asset compliance and risk management monitor, and it is used to detect and investigate crypto fraud and financial crime. Kind of, yeah, that's as simple as that, right?
That's exactly right. You've got the elevator down for sure. Yeah, no, it's look, we talk about building a safer financial system, and really, bad guys are always going to attack, any financial system, whether it's traditional or whether it's crypto. And there needs to be tools and there needs to be investigators to stop that from happening. And that's very much sort of what we do at TRM.
So for me, Arie, TRM is slightly new to me. I think I was aware of you guys, but I'm less familiar. But I'm familiar with, I suppose, other tools and organizations such as chain analysis, which a lot of people, a lot of listeners certainly will be more familiar with. Is there a distinction between what you guys do and organizations such as chain analysis, or are they reasonably similar?
Sure. No, that's a great question. And, obviously, if you understand sort of what Chainalysis does, sort of trace and track the flow of funds in cryptocurrency, then you very much understand sort of partially what we do. I would say we're very much a second mover in the sort of blockchain analytics space. Chainalysis has been around for really almost a decade now and was really built in sort of a Bitcoin only world, right? Bitcoin was synonymous with crypto for many years. And really what it was built for was tracing in Bitcoin. That's the data architecture. And TRM really sort of just the benefit of being a second mover in the space. We built our data architecture entirely cross-chain. So in TRM, if you're an investigator following the funds in cryptocurrency, if you're a compliance officer, if you're an agent, you are able to trace across about 26 different blockchains and in about 1 million different digital assets in TRM. And that's really sort of, again, like a second mover advantage. So I'd say sort of look, if you understand sort of what Chainalysis and some other blockchain analytics solutions do, you kind of understand what we do, but magnitude's more powerful. Interestingly, a lot of times, Andy, someone will say, hey, 1 million different digital assets, that there aren't even 1 million different digital assets. There's like 15,000 on CoinMarketCap. But what's so interesting about our data architecture is if you issued Andy Coin tomorrow as an ERC20 or another sort of token that we natively cover, we would automatically cover that token. And that becomes important when an exchange wants to be able to cover a certain token, offer a certain token, or frankly, when bad actors are using certain tokens to commit fraud and financial crime. So some similarities, some differences, but very much the same space.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you for that, Arie. And I'd love to understand then, maybe just talk us through some of the different, I suppose, use cases, but more specifically the clients or the end users, if you like, of your services. So I suppose, well, I'll let you do that, but yeah, please, I imagine there's a range. What does that look like, Arie?
There are. It really, what makes the job that I get to do so interesting is you get to work with really, really smart, thoughtful people across the cryptoverse, right? So we work with public sector. So we work with law enforcement, and primarily as a tracing tool, kind of what I described. There's a hack or there's a ransomware payment made. We are working closely with law enforcement partners to trace the flow of funds. Or they're using our tool to trace the flow of funds, ultimately to investigate, hopefully with the goal of seizing back those hacked or stolen funds. So they're using us primarily as a forensics tool. A great example, just yesterday, the day before, Homeland Security investigations, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security, announced that they had made an arrest of I believe it was a Vietnamese national, for a NFT rug pull involving something called the Baller Ape Club. And in that press release, they credited TRM with, having supported that mission, essentially supported the blockchain analytics piece, the tracing, the tracking, the following the flow of funds. So that's very much the use case for law enforcement. We also work with regulators globally. And that's sort of a little bit of a different use case. They use the tool to trace and track, but they're also using it to understand what are the risks associated with our regulated ecosystem, right? Hey, if I regulate a VASP, a virtual asset service provider, essentially a crypto exchange or a broker or a custodian, right? I want to understand what are the risks associated with that entity. And they use TRM to sort of know that VASP, to understand what is the risk profile. Then sort of, as I mentioned, the really cool thing is we also work with the private sector, right? We work with some of the largest financial institutions as they are figuring out sort of how to safely engage with cryptocurrency. We are an anti-money laundering compliance solution for crypto businesses. So if you're an exchange, if you're Coinbase or Binance or FTX or sort of, a large exchange, you have a tool like TRM to do transaction monitoring, to make sure that every transaction, that every wallet address that you are engaging with is not a risk of sanctions exposure or terrorist financing or child exploitation or any one of 50 other predicate offenses. So, on the one hand, we're building investigations with law enforcement, and on the other hand, we are anti-money laundering compliance for a bank or for a crypto business. So it's an incredibly diverse subset of clients, but really interesting to get kind of to work with all these different entities in the space.
Yeah, got it, Arie. And I can understand the AML, anti-money laundering side of the business would be very much your bread and butter, I imagine. In terms of the more serious, I guess, illegality that you're talking about, like the human trafficking, black market transactions, that kind of stuff. So traditionally, Arie, you'll be very well aware that this has been a narrative that is used to criticize or even attack blockchains, right? Because they have the ability for nefarious actors to conduct anonymous transactions, essentially. But I believe today, I'm sure you have a much better grasp on this, the actual percentage of those kind of transactions has been falling and it is now, I believe, quite small in terms of the total transactions across the markets. But I wonder if you can just speak to the kind of trends that you see here in terms of that illegality, if you like, Arie.
Sure. No, absolutely. And great questions. There's so much to unpack, I think, frankly, from what you just asked.
There is.
I'll take a couple of them. But definitely sort of look, I think that there's agreement sort of across blockchain analytics and other companies that look into this space that, look, the overall illicit activity in crypto is relatively low compared to the volume. But what I would say sort of about, you talk about the transparency or the anonymity, right? As I mentioned, I was a federal prosecutor for 11 years. I did cases involving bulk cash smuggling and networks of hawalas and shell companies and high value art and yachts, London real estate, right? Miami real estate. There's no TRM for those things. You can't trace and track the flow of funds in an open way or an open ledger in, bulk cash smuggling. And I think the reality is that, there's always been fraud and financial crime in any financial system. In fact, if there wasn't, I'd be worried about the stability or the long-term sustainability of that financial system. But what I'd say is that, it's really in terms of crypto, the promise of crypto, permissionless, decentralized, sort of cross-border value transfer at the speed of the internet, also makes it attractive to illicit actors who want to move money, large amounts of money at the speed of the internet. Yes. I think that when you get beyond that paradox is the fact that now financial crime investigators can follow the flow of funds in ways that they have never been able to do before. And there's so many examples of sort of investigations that have been very much only in crypto type of investigations, right? Where you're following the flow of funds to a wallet address where law enforcement is able to use tools to seize it back, whether it's Colonial Pipeline or Bitfinex or some other example. That money is long gone in the traditional financial system. So I think that there are advantages for bad actors to use crypto. You can move money faster and in larger amounts, but it is very, very difficult still today to off-ramp those funds into the real world to actually use them. You see bad actors use more and more sophisticated obfuscation techniques, and we can talk about those. But the reality is it's very hard ultimately to move money through those off ramps, the large compliant exchanges that use tools like TRM.
Yeah, that's very well said, Arie, and especially in the kind of, I suppose, the large amounts or the size that, really big criminal entities would be interested in moving. To me, Arie, it's a little bit of an arms race, right, though? Because certainly I imagine the kind of tools that you guys at TRM Labs have access to would be, right on the cutting edge in terms of their sophistication and ability to track movements on chain and across all these different chains, as you've talked about. So, at the same time, the blockchain developers are always coming up with new and interesting solutions to make it possible for people to conduct reasonably exotic financial transactions across that same blockchain ecosystem, and perhaps try and hide their movements, or at least make them anonymous. I wonder if you can just speak to this kind of, I'm not sure if arms race is the right word, but I think you know what I mean. Let's call it the war between the black hats and the white hats, even, if you like.
I like arms. I like arms race.
Okay.
And it's interesting, Andy. When I was a prosecutor, we used to call this whack-a-mole. The carnival game where you're hitting those moles and they keep popping up in different directions.
Yes.
And the reality is, we did this with shell companies, right? We'd knock one out, we'd whack one, and then another one would pop up, and it was a very frustrating game. And look, it's no different in crypto. The only difference with crypto, though, is that you can create more moles, if you will, faster than you ever could before in traditional finance. So, we see illicit actors continue to use all kinds of different obfuscation techniques, but the tools, as you said, are getting better and better as well. So you look at, something like mixing services, which are essentially exchanges on blockchains where you send funds through and they come out sort of clean, or different funds the other side. We see the continued use of mixing services like Tornado Cash, and recently OFAC designated or sanctioned a mixing service called Blender.io because it was being used by North Korea to launder funds. However, look, I think what we've also learned is that investigations don't end in mixers anymore, right? You see Bitfinex, you see the Ronin hack, you see other types of investigations where law enforcement and others are able to follow the funds, after they've gone through mixing services. So I think that, the tools, and it's not just the tools. I think something we always have to remember when we talk about blockchain analytics is we're software, right? I mean, it's really cool software, that builds investigations, but this is software. We're Microsoft Word, right? It's only powerful in the hands of really great agents and investigators. So when you look around, sort of really globally, certainly starting in the US, you look at places like FBI, like IRSCI, like HSI, Secret Service. They've really built sort of cadres of what we call power users of these tools, right? Financial crime investigators who are so good at using blockchain analytics to follow the money and build cases. So I think one huge advantage when you talk about an arms race is really not just the tools and the technology, but also the training and the sort of individuals that are actually sort of the agents doing the work. Because remember, what we live entirely on chain, right? A TRM. We follow the funds on blockchains. But really, if you ever want to actually get to the bad guy, you want to seize that wallet address, what you're really doing is you're using traditional police work. You're going to an exchange and serving a subpoena or a search warrant. You're using, international contacts. You're using other types of data, off-chain data. So really, like, sort of one of the key differentiators when you're talking about sort of how do you get better as the bad guys get better is really having sort of agents who are really trained and sharp in this space. And I can tell you that's something we see certainly every day. But look, there are other obfuscation techniques that are very, very hard still. Privacy coins like Monero are really something that folks in this space are not tracing in a meaningful way today. But I will tell you then you see other things like exchanges, the crypto community, if you will, has in most cases de-risked Monero, right? Good luck getting your hands on Monero today. So part of this is sort of the market has also decided, hey, we don't want to get involved in things that regulators are concerned about. So sort of de-risking there. You are always going to see bad actors get better, but you will continue to see, to your point, blockchain analytics and also the investigators that use it get better.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Arie, and I like that you've used Monero XMR as a good example, because I can remember back in, say, 2017, which is really when I started following crypto, and there was a big narrative then that privacy coins such as Monero would do very well in the future, simply because they were extremely good at doing what they said they could do, which is really simply make it anonymous at the speed of the internet payments possible. But since that time, you're exactly right. It has become harder and harder to get in and out of Monero in any kind of meaningful way, because a lot of the exchanges have kind of recognized where this is going, and they want to play ball with the regulators. I wonder, do you keep much of an eye on what is happening in that kind of regulation space? Because there is, as much as the exchanges they do want to play ball, there's still a little bit of a tension between, I guess that kind of libertarian, the initial ability to conduct essentially those XMR type anonymous transactions. A lot of the even the owners of some of the bigger exchanges do come from that world originally. It's a roundabout way of saying, do you keep an eye on the regulatory space, and what do you think is happening, Arie?
Yeah, Andy, I don't sleep anymore because I keep such a close eye on the regulatory space. I mean, it is crazy what is going on right now in sort of crypto regulation. I mean, literally 3 times a day, I think there's something major that actually occurs. Literally, within the last, few hours, I think that Treasury, the U.S. Treasury Department sent over its one of its responses to the White House for the executive order, talking about how the importance of international organizations and cooperation in the space. Just at the very end of last week, Friday, the European Parliament came to an agreement on MiCA, the markets and crypto asset legislation, which is an absolute watershed in the space. It's basically the first what I would call comprehensive framework for crypto policy, for a legal framework. And essentially, what we've seen over the last few years is really regulators sort of tackle this either by enforcement action or piecemeal. You talk about stablecoins, you talk about the environment. Here, what we see is a real comprehensive framework where you have anti-money laundering, you have environmental protections, or at least a discussion around environmental protections. You have stablecoin, specific stablecoin legislation, and then a series of other odds and ends. I say the thing that's sort of the real linchpin to me when I read this is what they call or what is being referred to as a passportable license. So it's essentially, it is, if you are get a license from a regulator in one European country, that license is good across Europe. So if you have a license in Spain, you could use it in France and Greece and Germany. And that is a really sort of big piece for the crypto industry that really wants to take the friction right out of engaging with different jurisdictions. And this idea of a passportable license is huge. That's a huge example, but that's just one of so many examples. I spoke this morning to a policy advisor at HM Treasury in the UK, which just released a really critical final guidance or final consultation on unhosted wallets and the travel rule. The travel rule basically says that virtual asset service providers, crypto exchanges essentially, must send customer information with funds to the next exchange. And what Treasury came out to say in the UK is, we absolutely believe that needs to happen from an anti-money laundering standpoint, but we're not going to require it of unhosted wallet transactions. Really huge development in space. But Andy, I mean, just to put a point on it, it is all the time. And what's so fun is for someone who, has spent much of his career in government and now gets to work sort of within the space in the private sector. It's watching sort of, a legal framework built, right? And, and to engage in it in this way is really, something you don't expect to happen really in your lifetime, right? Building the regulation for a new financial system. So you can tell I'm fired up, but it's so much fun to sort of get to engage in a space that's growing so fast and changing so rapidly.
Fascinating, Arie, and I mean you're exactly right, and that's really wonderfully said. I mean, it's and for those of us in the blockchain ecosystem, whatever part you're playing in this rollout, you're exactly right. We are literally seeing a new financial system and a new financial asset class being built from the ground up, and in a purely digital way. So it's fascinating to see and incredibly interesting to participate. I wonder if you sort of, there's a balance though. You talked about the travel rule and the kind of the debate that was happening around that in Europe, and also recently, I believe in Europe there was, I don't have the details, but there was one group of politicians were very serious in their attempt, I think, to try and ban proof of work Bitcoin mining in Europe, which I think if those two things, let's say those two rules were passed, that the travel rule, which would make it very difficult for just the average everyday crypto user to play in, let's say, the DeFi ecosystem or be able to send NFTs around. It would make that process very difficult. And again, if proof of work Bitcoin mining was banned in Europe, that would be difficult as well. When do regulations go too far?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Look, it is so critical to strike a balance, right? I mean, we need thoughtful regulation that doesn't stifle innovation, but at the same time, really takes into account a couple things. One, in my world, certainly, it's to stop bad actors from taking advantage of this new financial system, right? At the end of the day, this only works if there's trust in the system. And it is so critical to know that when your funds are in an exchange or in a wallet, that they are not going to be hacked. Or that you're not. I'm transacting with Andy, not a terrorist financier when I'm transacting on blockchains, right? There's got to be some trust built into the system, but at the same time, to your point, over regulation stifles innovation, and we have to be so smart that what we're regulating is the activity, not the technology. Regulators talk about being technology neutral. Well, they need to be technology neutral. And that is something that's absolutely critical here. So look, I am certainly, I came up as a prosecutor and a regulator. Like I believe in sort of thoughtful regulation, consumer investor protection, anti-money laundering, sort of these types of things. But at the same time, I have a little libertarian streak in me too, right? At least, I'm a crypto startup. I strongly believe that very much, like, if this is going to work, regulation is going to have to be thoughtful. And I think the UK, if you look actually at that, and I think that was what was so exciting about it, is what you had there was you had a process where regulators put out some thoughts, there was a consultation, and ultimately some of the ideas around unhosted wallets were walked back. And what you see a travel rule, which is probably necessary in some respects when you're talking about VASP to VASP or exchange to exchange, but it essentially removed unhosted wallets from that expectation, which I think is sort of, when you're talking about how do you thread that needle, how do you walk the line, there are certainly ways to do that. And look, I mean, when I ever have an opportunity to speak to lawmakers or policymakers, my view is in much of this, the technology is actually the answer, right? If you are worried about sort of the ability for bad actors to move funds on chain, TRM in many respects is the answer to that, right? There's more visibility using tools like TRM than we ever had before. That's kind of the conversation. And I think if we can get regulators and lawmakers to a place where they understand sort of the technology and actually the promise of it to police itself. One really fun example that I think you'll appreciate is, really a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, TRM, along with a number of different partners, Circle and Binance and Hedera, launched something called Chain Abuse, chainabuse.com. and it's a place on the internet where victims of fraud and scams and rug pulls and wash trading and things can report those scams to a larger community, and really just a way to crowdsource. I think of it as sort of the ways of crypto scams, right? It's a place where you can say, hey, I was hacked or I was scammed. Don't let it happen to you. And a place where you can use tools to investigate. So I think that there's a law enforcement and regulatory piece to this, but there's also a self-policing that is super unique to crypto. And I think we really need to lean into that as a crypto community.
Yeah, very much agree, Arie. Again, very nicely said. And unfortunately, crypto just is, fast money, new technology industries. They attract the best and brightest from an innovation point of view, but they also attract the best and brightest from a bad actor point of view. But perhaps with that in mind, as we start to finish off this part of the podcast, Arie, you said before that you sometimes struggle to sleep because you're just so busy catching up with everything. Let's expand on that a little bit, if you like. What keeps you up at night in terms of, what do you see just on the horizon in the future? What are some of the problems or potential, what are the bad actors working on that is going to make your job harder? What's coming down the pipe that most people are missing that keeps you up at night?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And look, at the end of the day, I always it's hard for me to take my prosecutor hat off. And, there are different kinds of threats out there, the threat landscape, right? You see hacks and scams and frauds, and those are bad and people are losing money. You see these types of events like Terra, systemic type events around stablecoins, and these are terrible things, and people are losing money. There's no doubt. I do believe that the system will be stronger ultimately and sort of come out of this moment. The things that keep me up at night are really kind of what I think of as like the existential threats, really the national security threats, and that's probably mostly from my background and then what I do now at TRM. But it wasn't just that the Ronin blockchain was hacked a couple of months ago, and $600 million is a lot of money, but it was hacked by North Korea. And and it was hacked by North Korea so they could take those funds and use them for weapons proliferation and other destabilizing activity. And I don't know that it's been announced. I don't know that it is necessarily for sure. But when you look at the typologies around the recent Harmony Bridge hack, the Horizon Bridge hack, part of Harmony, it has a lot of the linchpins of North Korea, sort of a state actor like Lazarus Group. The idea that North Korea can steal funds, $600 million at the speed of the internet to fund these types of activities is one of those things that keeps me up at night. And I think one of the things that's so important is, I think sometimes these are thought of as crypto issues because crypto is what's stolen, or it's a crypto business that's being attacked. But really, these are cybersecurity issues. And it is so critical for crypto businesses that are building today to harden their cyber defenses against these types of attacks. Because not only do you not want to lose all that money or have your business be hurt, but you also don't want to be in a position where you're helping a rogue regime fund, nuclear weapons. So I think there are things that can be done. I think it's a challenge, but it's definitely something when you think of the things that keep me up at night. The other kind of existential threats are we want to ensure that terrorists aren't using this for terrorist financing. We need to stop this scourge of ransomware attacks on, everything from large, oil pipelines to small rural health systems. It is absolutely critical. We recently stood up at TRM an incident response team that handles 24/7 incident response to an attack on a crypto business. And really, that's not our business. But what we know is that we could help, and it is so important that we're kind of all in this together, especially from a national security perspective. You need to stop bad guys from taking advantage of the speed and pseudonymity of crypto. So the regs are just stuff that I stay up at night reading, but this is the stuff that I stay up at night not being able to sleep about, if that makes sense, Andy.
Absolutely, Arie. And I guess, from that kind of at a nation state level, it feels like, Arie, perhaps this decade, the decade ahead, or it feels like there's going to be a tension between, it's almost like currency wars, really, right? So you, on one hand, Bitcoin is now, or it always has been, the world's largest and perhaps only, truly decentralized blockchain that can kind of survive, if you like, maybe a nation state level attack. So Bitcoin is already there, and it's just getting bigger. Is there going to be a kind of a currency war between the likes of Bitcoin? Then you've got all these, the rise of central bank digital currencies, which will probably be deployed this decade, and then whatever happens to the fiat currencies, the USD, the Chinese currency. Do you sense a kind of there's a nation state attack vector if one country decides to deploy into Bitcoin ahead of another? Are these things talked about?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Am I allowed to answer? I have no idea to any of these questions. No, I will say, look, I think when I'm asked something like this, my answer is usually something along the lines of, look, I don't know, but what I do know is that the future of digital money is digital money, and that doesn't probably mean one thing. And I think what we will continue to see is sort of different use cases for different types of assets. I think today we see the primary use case as really an investment mechanism, right? People buy it, they hold it, they trade it. I think what I'm really excited about is when we use digital assets, whatever form, whether it's CBDC, stable coins, Bitcoin, or something else, for payments. And I think that's really kind of the next development in this space. When I can, we all spend so much money on Amazon, right, and Walmart and these other places. When you can use Bitcoin or crypto seamlessly to transact for payments, and I think that's really what's so exciting from a national security perspective. There's no question. I mean, I think that there's a perception today that we're in sort of a digital space race with China, for example. I sort of reject that, because if it's just from developing a CBDC, they're way ahead of us. But the reality is that the U.S. dollar is still the global reserve currency. If we issued a digital dollar today, it would have a lot more, I think a lot more buy-in than China's CBDC does, or will in a few years. That could absolutely change. And I think it's very important from a national security perspective to sort of stay on top of that. But I don't know that CBDCs are ultimately the answer. I think that there'll be ultimately a mix of different assets for different reasons. And I think CBDCs, stable coins, Bitcoin, coins that we've not even, Amazon coin, right? Coins that have not even sort of made it, into the conversation, could be that kind of next iteration. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how all this plays out. But I think we may think of currency, of money, as something maybe different than we think of it today when we think of greenbacks or pounds or euros.
Yeah, fascinating thoughts, Arie. Thank you for that. Well, let's go to a very quick break, and then we will come back. We'll have some fun. We'll finish off with the very famous Crypto Conversation Hot Take Round. Back in 1 second.
For crypto indices and benchmarking, Brave New Coin's powerful indexing engine can calculate high-frequency intraday and end-of-day indices for a wide range of index products. Brave New Coin's custom indices team delivers experienced consultancy, premium data, and trusted calculation. Contact BNC today to find out more.
All right, we are back, and I'm with Arie Redbord. Arie is the head of legal and government affairs at TRM Labs, a blockchain intelligence company. It's been fun talking all things blockchain analytics with you today, Arie. I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid-fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Absolutely. In fact, when you said hot takes, I thought you said hot wings at first. And I was watching this. I was listening to this podcast the other day where they have celebrity guests come on and eat wings with them. I thought maybe we're going to do that today, but no, just hot takes on crypto, huh?
Yeah, hot takes on crypto, but I'm familiar with hot ones. That's a great show.
Cool? Yeah.
I mean, what can go wrong? A hot wing and some hot sauce.
I think it sounds great. I think it sounds great. Awesome. We'll do that next time.
All right, next time. Arie, all I'm going to do is I'm going to run some questions at you. I just want you to answer them in kind of honest, hot take style, quick, snappy answers. Question 1, Arie, is where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
I am on far from the Bitcoin maximalist piece. I think there's gonna, as I said in that last answer, there's gonna be lots of cool ways to use different coins to transact over time.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I tend to agree, Arie. Well, what would you say then is your firmest conviction, crypto opinion?
I think that ultimately we're going to strike a balance between over-regulation and innovation. That regulators will get there. It will take them time, but what I see a move in that direction.
Yeah, nice. Arie, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So you'll be only too well aware that 10 years in blockchain is a very, very long time indeed. But cast your mind forward, whatever you like here, blockchain, DeFi, crypto regulation, what does it all look like in 10 years' time?
Yeah, great question. I'm gonna throw one curveball at you and say I disagree with that statement to begin with. I joined TRM about 2 years ago. We were 9 people. We're 130 today across 15 countries, and I can't believe what you can accomplish if you put your head down and not sleep for 2 years as a small team. So I reject the question to begin with from Mr. Gates, but. I will say in terms of 10 years, like you said, that is a lifetime in this space, an absolute lifetime in this space. I think this space will be dramatically different. I think it'll be more regulated, but I also think we'll have all kinds of different use cases that we haven't even thought of today. My big takeaway, though, is I think we're going to see a robust payments ecosystem in crypto. I think we're going to be using it to buy stuff. I think it's going to be seamless. I think it's going to be, disintermediated Venmo, right? It's going to be easy to use on your phone, and we're going to be able to use it absolutely everywhere.
Very nicely said. All right, the flip side of this, Arie, is a quote by William Gibson, who of course said that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. With that in mind, can you think of an example, Arie, of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
I think crypto. I know it's a crazy answer on this podcast, but we are so far down the rabbit hole, Andy, and so many of the people that we talk to. Talk to your parents, talk to your friends who aren't in this space. I think this future is absolutely here today, but we have not seen mass adoption yet, and I think that's coming.
Very nicely said again. All right, let's start to finish off, Arie. And as we finish off, time to zoom out, time to get weird for just a second. What do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia? Bit of a loaded question with someone with your background, Arie. You have seen the worst of humanity, but come on.
Well, I'm a utopia guy all day long, Andy. And anyone who knows me knows I'm an eternal optimist. Dystopia is for when I watch Handmaid's Tale on Hulu. Otherwise, it's all utopia.
I love it. And that brings us nicely to the final question, Arie, which is, what is your favorite science fiction book, a film, or TV show?
Oh, Star Wars. I mean, absolutely. I was a kid who grew up in the late 70s, and nothing is close. I have indoctrinated my 2 boys who are also big Star Wars fans. It's a big part of what we do, for sure.
Excellent. I love it. And I'm with you, Arie. We're probably of a similar vintage, Generation X. So it's just Generation X. For Generation X, Star Wars is the sweet spot.
Absolutely. Can I do into my mic
All right. This has been so much fun, Arie. Really enjoyed talking to you today. Close it out. Please tell the listeners where they can find you on Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever else you like to hang out on the internet, and what they should do if they are interested in learning more about the analytics work that you guys do at TRM Labs.
Absolutely. Really appreciate it. Yeah, go to trmlabs.com. We have an insights page where we have Tons of great blog posts, great content. Subscribe to our newsletter, the TRM Labs Weekly Roundup. Check out TRM Talks, which is a monthly webcast where I sit down with policymakers and business leaders in crypto. And would love a follow on LinkedIn in particular, although I try my hand at Twitter, but I'm not quite as good there. I don't think I'm snarky enough, Andy, for Twitter, but I'm decent on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Arie. All the best and bye for now. Awesome.
Have a great day.
Well, there you go. Hey, that was Arie from TRM Labs. Wow, very smart guy. I've got to say, I liked Arie, and I think he, really did strike that sensible balance, as he talked about a number of times. The very important balance between regulatory oversight and allowing innovation to happen. But I think if people like Arie are kind of pushing that case, the more people like Arie there are out there pushing that case, the better it is for the long-term health and viability of the crypto ecosystem, in my view there. All right. Thanks again to Arie and his team. Thank you to you, the listeners, for still listening here at the end of the show. Don't forget to subscribe to the Crypto Conversation so you know when each new episode drops. But that is today's show. Thanks, team. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin. See ya.